Let's get more on this from Kassandra Sundt from DW Business. Welcome to the studio, Kassandra. Let's start with Air India's overall safety record.
Well, Air India is the oldest airline in India, and for a while, it was also the only airline in the country. And it has experienced the most accidents, the most being in the 1970s and the early 2000s, though there have been recent notable large accidents in the last few years. One was an Air India crash in Mangalore in 2010. That flight was from Dubai International Airport. It crashed on landing and killed over 150 people. Then in 2020, an Air India Express flight from Dubai to Kozhikode, it skidded off of a tabletop runway, though the vast majority did survive. But despite these terrible accidents, Air India has worked to significantly improve its safety systems and protocols in recent years. There has been a recent restructure and investments in the fleet into modernizing some of its safety systems. But one tragic detail that stuck out to me from this recent incident is that the airplane involved seems to have been a Boeing 787 Dreamliner, and that's seen by many as a next-generation aircraft designed for long-haul travel. So it had until now a spotless safety record when it comes to hull losses.
Okay. Tell us about this restructuring you mentioned that the company's going through.
Yeah, this restructure was years in the making. It started in 2017 when the government approved the privatization of the company, meaning it was going to sell off its national carrier. But it took a long time for them to find a willing buyer. That didn't happen until January 2022. But that was quite a difficult time for the aviation industry. We were almost 2 years into the COVID-19 pandemic, which had devastated many airlines around the world because of border closures and just reduced travel appetite. And then in the beginning of 2022, there were also this kind of touch and go closure of factories and localized lockdowns, which meant that parts weren't always getting to where they needed to be. And that really caused a problem when it comes to the refit of the company at the time as well.
Okay, so it's had its challenges. And what sort of state is it in now?
So at the time that it bought Air India, the Tata Group bought it for over $2 billion. And it operated 2 other airlines at the time as well. So this restructure has really been about getting all 4 of these airlines kind of operating under one umbrella, the Tata Group umbrella. For Air India specifically, the challenges have been updating the fleet. It was once known for these really lavish interiors. It was quite decadent. But this part shortage has shown up in quite strange ways sometimes, including, for example, getting new chairs, which required custom orders, and then that was delayed because of COVID-19 shutdowns. And so the specifications to meet these wide-body planes have been difficult to meet. And the CEO at the time acknowledged that the airline hadn't had a proper refit or a refresh of its fleet in decades. But since then, there have been hundreds of millions of dollars poured into the refit of individual planes. There have been big orders for new jets. And just earlier this year, Air India said it was looking to order a slew of new wide-body jets to meet an increased frequency of routes that were just announced last week to cities like Bangkok, Colombo, and Kathmandu international offerings.
Okay, so Air India, a part of this massive business conglomerate, Tata. How is this plane crash likely to impact the company's reputation?
Well, it's hard to state for folks who haven't been to India how big Tata Group is there. When I was there earlier this year, you see Tata Group on almost everything from air conditioners to the side of vehicles. They've got their hands in many, many businesses across the country. Even at one airport that I was at, I bought a Starbucks cup of coffee. It was an early flight. And as a result, I saw in my statement, it was a Tata Starbucks purchase because they even have their hands in the coffee business there. So because Tata is so involved in so many parts of the Indian economy, there's a lot of pillars for the company to stand on right now. And frankly, it's also survived many scandals in the past, including violent clashes between people protesting factories or land acquisitions and police. So it's unlikely that this one incident could be the incident, but it could possibly be the straw that breaks the camel's back.
Okay, thank you for that, Kassandra. Kassandra Sundt from DW Business.
And our coverage continues now here in the studio with my colleague Javier Arguedas. Javier, let's talk about maybe possibly what could have happened here. We know that the plane had just taken off. It reached, 625 feet, and then it crashed. Any idea why?
Well, there's a million possibilities, Brent, and a word of caution here. Air crash investigations usually take years and international efforts to really know what happened, and it's usually not just one particular factor, but mostly many of them at the same time that causes a tragedy like this one. However, what we can talk about right now is what is common and what is uncommon in this particular case. Now, what is common is the phase of the flight in which it took place. The vast majority of aircraft crashes happen 3 minutes after takeoff or 8 minutes before landing. It appears as though in this case it was in that so-called critical phase of the flight, because it is the phase where the pilots have to take the biggest amount of decisions and where they have to react the quickest. So if there was any type of human error here, and more than half of air crashes happen because of human errors, that would probably happen in this critical phase. What is uncommon, though, is the flight itself, if you will. It is a commercial, scheduled, regular flight by Air India, one of the major airlines in the world, that was connecting two major airports, London Gatwick and Ahmedabad, which is also a major airport in India that handles more than 13 million passengers per year. What does that mean? It means it's probably highly skilled professional people in the airport and in the aircraft, seasoned people. It's infrastructure, proper runways, radars, sensors, and it's also, of course, safety procedures and protocols that are in place in these major airports. It was not a random landing strip in the middle of the jungle where this plane took off from, and it is also using one of the most modern and sophisticated aircraft, which is the Boeing 787 Dreamliner.
You were talking earlier to me that it was very hot when the plane took off. What, 40 degrees or Celsius?
Yes,
could that maybe have played a factor?
It is a risk factor in any case when you have these high temperatures. Apparently, the temperatures today reached more than 40 degrees Celsius, and that usually means that the airplane will take longer to lift off. The engines struggle, if you will, to create the necessary thrust, and that usually also implies regulations that require airplanes to carry less weight. However, this is also all taken into consideration in these modern airplanes, and they also have alert systems if anything goes wrong.
This was a Boeing Dreamliner. We know that Boeing has been in the headlines for safety-related issues. There were issues, I understand, with the Dreamliner's engines?
Yes, correct. When people hear Boeing these days, they will think about the latest scandals that have hit the company, and it is true that the security record of Boeing is questionable at this point. However, those involved the 737 MAX, which is another airplane. This one, the 787 Dreamliner, also had problems in the beginning. They had battery issues. They were grounded when they first entered service in 2011. And they've also had issues regarding the engines. However, you may think that Boeing actually worked on these issues because there's more than 1,000 Dreamliners in commercial service, and there have been for more than 10 years. So you would assume, with caution, that if there was any design failure or any problem that is a serial problem, we would know by now.
Yeah, and until today, the safety record for the Dreamliner had been relatively good. Perhaps that is changing. Javier, good to have you in the studio. Thank you.